Woo, we're in. Welcome, everyone. Love our listeners, the new ones as well as the old. We're going to have an interesting discussion on KPHRED Prime Live today. I'm KPHRED, and my co-host is Barbara Wainwright, who for some reason did something awful in a past life and has to be here.
Thank you, Phred. It's a pleasure to be here as always. And I'm so looking forward to our show today because we're going to hear from some very interesting veterans of the United States Forces. We got a variety here, so that's really cool.
Oh, these are real American heroes on here,
Right.
People who got to blow things up. And that's one of my favorite things to think about, especially when I watch TV, which is why I shouldn't watch TV and just keep my face on radio. So we're golden here. You can you can chat at the website, or you can dial in at 323-580-5755. That's 323-580-5755. On a sad note, Blog Talk Radio, our phone provider, is dying at the end of January. And while this has caused a whole lot of unexpected work to be done, luckily, as we started to build the KPHRED platform last April, Jeff Norris of TCG Solutions has brought our own generation of dial-in phone systems, so that the show we do, you'll be able to dial in at 724-9-KPHRED, or for those who don't get it, 17249-KPHRED. Pretty cool. How's that for news?
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's amazing. So, Phred, with Blog Talk Radio going out of business, doesn't that sound like a huge opportunity to snatch up some new shows?
You mean folks that like the dial-in spontaneity of their broadcast? Yeah, I think so, it almost seems like I spent years of planning this. Oh, Ray's cracking up going, yeah, I've been part of this. And Larry's going,
planned obsolescence.
Oh, gosh.
Ray Pillar, our for those of you who can't see them, which is everybody, is our co-host on Pillar's Principles, whose most recent episode has been blowing up his LinkedIn profile with over 26,000% increase. And it was an interview with Meg Roberts. You want to say something about that 26,000 plus man?
Ma'am?
Man.
Oh, okay. It's a surprise. Of course, I think ever since Phred and I have been together, it's been one surprise after another. So he's just dragged me along.
So, kudos to Ray. Want to give him a thumbs up? Go ahead, Barbara.
Oh yeah!
I know what
That's really amazing.
And see, Ray is the one who defined the initials of the station.
Oh, so that was a great idea, in my opinion. I love it. I like being on KPHRED.
The fact that you're all here is his fault.
Blame it on me,
Someone takes a hit, right?
That's why he stays mobile in a bus that could honestly launch a missile off of it.
Yeah, you probably could from the top. Yeah.
All right, so we need to introduce our two co-hosts and then we'll introduce our guest. How that? Unless you got any news. You're on 3 different podcasts. Any news from any of them?
Oh my gosh, no, we're just still plugging along. I love having the opportunity. I think it's kind of a privilege to be working with the other hosts that I work with. I love it. So yeah, no news from this end on the podcast perspectives. We're all good.
All right, so we have 2 other non-veteran co-hosts on here. The Tortoise Lady.
We gotta work on that. I need a different moniker.
Well, so Katrin hosts The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business, which means either she's looking like Clint Eastwood, Eli Wallach, or, you know, oh God, what's the other dude's name? The one who dies in the end. So, Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah, that's not any better.
And Deanna Brakefield is our other guest from, or co-host, sorry, from Neurodivergent News Resources for Living in a Normal World. Say hello, Deanna.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. So either of you ladies want to say anything news-wise? And you got have you got a good, bad, and ugly of veterans for me?
Of course I do.
Oh, nice.
I'm always ready. Do we want to do that now, or is that going to come later?
All right, so we'll do that toward the end because that'll stimulate even another round of discussion. And I'm really...
I do, because I actually have a question for all of our vets on here. I have a theory based on some information, and I'm always one to adjust my theories based on new information. So I'd love to get some input from these fine gentlemen to see if my theory holds true or if it needs to be adjusted.
Excellent. Ms. Brakefield.
Yes, sir. No, I do not have anything. You know me, I'm quiet until I'm not.
Okay. So, Barbara, I'll give you a ladies' choice on who we want to introduce first.
All right. So we're doing the introduction of not just our guests and sometimes our regular visitors, but also introducing them from the perspective of what they used to do in terms of being of service in the United States forces somehow. And I would love to introduce Robert Tolan right now and hear more about his experience in the United States forces.
Yes, well, I appreciate it. I served in the U.S. Army as a cavalry scout from 2012 to 2015 on active duty, and then went reserves until 2018. After that, I was in the military police unit out of Bakersfield while I was in the reserves, but I was not military police. They refused to train me. Matter of fact, that could be a conversation on why I got out of the reserves and why people were getting out. It was because of them refusing to train over, which means you can't promote or anything at that point. And I also run multiple veteran nonprofit organizations. Started one when I was 16 or 17 years old with my parents, and that's still going very strong. That one's called Welcome Home Military Heroes, and I also am the vice chairman for Honor Flight Central Coast chapter, and then the military affairs chairman for the Santa Maria Chamber, and I get to work directly with Vandenberg Space Force Base. So that's pretty fun.
Wow, that's so great. The first question that pops into my head is, what was it inside of you that wanted to create a nonprofit at such a young age? You said 17, right? What was it that inspired you to do that?
It was really my dad. My dad, I think it stems from multiple things. One, it was that, I don't know if you guys remember that commercial, and they had that like very sad song playing, and it was about veteran suicide. I think that's really what got my dad started on that. And that same song is the one that's used in like the dog commercials that, you know, I forget what that song is called. But anyways.
Is it the Arms of the Angel by Sarah McLachlan?
Arms of the Angels. Yes, that's it. Arms of the Angels. So, you know, it hits everyone, right? And then there was at my parents' church, or it was our church at the time, they had an organization come in called AmpSurf, and they brought all the veterans in from all over the country or even other parts of the world. And they did like this welcome home for them. And all of them said they'd never received that before. And that's really what started the organization. This was back in September of 2010. And from there, it was born. We started welcoming home all the men and women when they returned home from deployment, whether that was the train station, the airport, or whatever. You know, I don't know if you guys have seen those videos at the airport, you know, online. You know, that's what we do. And we've expanded since then. We have about a dozen missions that we do. We still have our original mission of welcoming them back home, whether they're coming back from deployment, coming home for R&R, getting out of the military, or they just never received one. You know, it doesn't matter their age. We'll go honor them, but we do care packages now, funerals, veteran angel tree during the holiday season. COVID, we started the veteran vehicle salutes. So we started doing like the little parades around town to go honor our men and women. That will never go away, especially for our older veterans. We're honoring a lot of 100-year-olds. Matter of fact, we're honoring an 80-year-old Vietnam veteran today in Aurora Grande. So yeah, we have about a dozen missions through there, and it's just the problem is my family and I we're yes people. If it's military related, they're like, you guys should do that. We're like, okay, let's go. We're trying to stop that because I have a 2 and a 4-year-old now. Like we're trying to spend more time with family and do stuff. I mean, we have stuff going on almost on the daily, so we're trying to let other people take charge.
Yes, and enlist others to help out for sure. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that would love to have a legitimate way to turn around and help veterans.
Yes.
So
that's
listening to Robert brings up 3 things in my head. One, Vandenberg Space Force. That really sounds like a fun place to visit. Can we get in? 2, you said you were in police force in Bakersfield. Is it true that was worse than Afghanistan? More dangerous, I should say?
Yes, we're actually on like Oildale side, and the things that we saw over there, and we were just going over there to report to a building, but the things that we saw surrounding it and the crime that was taking place around it, we always joked around like, are we back in the Middle East? Like, what's going on over here? Like, they don't allow us to carry any weapons over here because the sheriff's department is the one that shows up. So
no air support.
We kind of want to be carrying a weapon right now. And luckily, a lot of the military police that were there are, they're police officers in their full-time job, and so a lot of them had concealed carry. So I was very fine. I didn't have one. Our county doesn't really issue those. So I was happy to be around them while I was over on the Oildale side. But you have the hit and miss over there in Bakersfield too. You have the ones who really, really hate the military, and you have the ones who will do anything for the military. So you get flip off in 1 second, and the next second there's a whole parade of American flags. It's just you didn't know. It depends what street you're turning down.
And that's part of the question of the day that we'll get to in a bit. The other thing was you mentioned Honor Flight Chicago, and somewhere around the first time I got Larry on camera, my partner Mike Buller and I would go down to we were working with the Honor Flight Chicago, and we'd go down and interview vets on returning back. And one of the truest sets of words that I ever heard came out of a regional director of I don't know, one of the service organizations there. And he said, the problem is vets don't talk to vets. And so this show is one of those things of I need you guys to be able to talk to our audience because the question we're ultimately talking about is critical. So on that note, I get to pick the next person. Joy of being a host. I'm going to go with the guy who I just mentioned, who I interviewed way back then. And I'm sitting listening to him speak, and I'm going, damn, he's good. Mr. Larry Broughton. Did I get it right that time?
Yes, indeed. Hey, Phred. Good to see you again. Hello, guys. All right. So the question is, what did I do in the military and what's going on now, I guess, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So I enlisted in the Army with the intention of getting into Special Forces, into the Green Berets. A long story on how that even happened. But I spent a little over 9 years in the Army. Most of that was in special operations. I had to go through basic training, jump school, the Defense Language Institute, where I learned Russian. And then the rest of the time was actually on the teams. I got out when I started traveling quite a bit and just feeling like I might be able to make a bigger impact on the world in the civilian space. And frankly, Phred always jokes around with me about this, but I did think I could get into the political arena back then because I was seeing the way some of these third world countries were being run, and this will tell you how my brain operates. I was thinking, crap, if these idiots can run a country, I can run a country. How hard can it be, right?
Freaking men.
That's kind of the entrepreneurial spirit. And so I decided to get out and go to university to study political science. And I started working on a bunch of different political campaigns while I was going to school. But I ended up falling in love with the hotel industry, which was my job after I got out of the military. Became a partner in that hotel company, and now have my own hotel company. But I've been mentoring primarily veteran entrepreneurs, leaders, and high achievers for 25 or almost 30 years at this point, just to lean more into their fullest potential. I didn't have an entrepreneurial mentor when I first got into the entrepreneurial space, and I fumbled around and made tons of mistakes. And so I speak at a lot of veteran conferences. I mean, all kinds of conferences, but my give back is, Robert was saying, if a veteran conference calls us and says, hey, Larry, will you do a keynote? It's, yeah, okay, when is it? We'll make it happen, right? Now, in addition to all that, I'm also a board member of an amazing organization called the Raven Drum Foundation, which brings complementary alternative medicines to veterans and first responders. It was founded by a guy that some of you will know, a guy named Rick Allen, who is the drummer for Def Leppard, who lost his arm on a New Year's Eve in a car accident and still remained drummer of Def Leppard still today, selling out arenas around the world, right? And so his wife and he, Lauren Monroe, started this foundation about 20 years ago. And so I'm on that board, still serving the first responders and veteran community.
Go ahead. So there's a whole lot I can say, but because like I said, I followed the dude for years. And please, I'm not kidding when I'm telling you should run. I'm dead serious. I know people who work on the campaign. It's all good. So go ahead, Barbara.
Wow. Okay. So it's so interesting that you looked at getting, I love the story. you were observing the way that other countries were run and who was running them and went, oh, I could do this. I got this.
Yeah.
So what role were you thinking of running for in government?
Well, originally I was going to be the youngest U.S. senator from California. That was my thought way back then. Mm-hmm. Then I started getting involved in the political arena and realized I am not built like a legislator. I am built like an executive. Yeah. And I could not see myself sitting around committees. If you've ever watched any of these school board committees or watched, some of these committee meetings on C-SPAN, I don't have the patience for that. I am the type of person like, this is what we're doing. We're moving out. We're getting it done. And that's how I'm built. So I would be better as if I were to ever be in the political arena, which I'm not going to be, would be governor or president. That's it. And it ain't going to happen in California. So,
so politics is something that we try and steer away from on this show, which is a good thing because boy, oh boy, could that stir up a lot of, like a hornet's nest or something.
Well,
anyway.
we might have the wrong topic today then, because.
Oh my gosh! Right.
Thank you for the warning.
Well, yeah, there's some really strong emotions that I just look at some of the comments on Facebook or the chat rooms and things like that, and you just go, dang, these people are really fired up about one way or the other, So do you have any thoughts on that now that
I do. I think that's one of the reasons why we need to have more people in the military, because we learn about unity and working on the same team. That's one of the things I always talk about. In any other environment, now again, I spent my time in Special Forces. There's 12 guys on an A team. These are all people who have higher than average intelligence, generally like way over 120 is like the minimum IQ, type A personalities, hard chargers, right? What happens when you get 12 guys in a boardroom like that? What generally happens? Fisticuffs, exactly. Fisticuffs, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen on Special Forces A team. Well, why is that? Because we subordinate our own agenda for the success of the mission. Right? Yeah. It's team. The mission comes first. You learn about unity. People come from a variety of different backgrounds, right? And you learn how to work with each other. Crying out loud. The military has proven over and over again that the bigotry that used to happen in the military, like think about this. When black servicemen started serving alongside white servicemen, we proved that this can work, right? Yeah. And there are some people who have never been exposed to different cultures, different ethnicities until they get into the military, right? And one of the things, I forget who said this, but it's a great quote, that travel is the antidote to bigotry and racism.
Good.
Right? The more we get out there and travel and get out of our own little bubble,
yes,
the more our blinders come off and we learn a whole lot more. So that's why, this is what scares me, that we have less than 1% of our adult population serving in the military nowadays. I think it's 0.85%.
Wow.
0.85% of our population is doing the heavy lifting for our country.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's a problem.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I wasn't aware that there was such a small percentage serving, like you said. And also, I so agree with that. Once you travel outside of the bubble, wherever it is that you're living, and you go to even another state in the United States, things are so different. I mean, it's like the first thing that popped in my head is the bugs in Texas are large.
Well, in some cases, Barbara, it's not that person's fault, because we are such a big country.
Yes.
I mean, traveling from New York to Texas is like traveling across the entirety of Europe, right? And how many countries are you meeting and cultures are you meeting in between there?
Yeah.
Right? Definitely.
But there is an intentionality that we must have if we want to break this down a little bit.
Yeah, and you know what, Larry, I love that you're talking about unity and bringing people together, because we are all human beings living on the same planet. It just makes sense that we would work together to uplift humanity.
All right, so she's gone and done it again. I need to specify to our listeners who may be either space alien, which I have to, when I look at government, assume that they've already infiltrated it by the actions of some, or AI. We don't want to offend any space aliens or AIs, but the meaning of we all have to work together, I want to get out there. I love that. Reminder, you can dial in at 323-580-5755. That's 323-580-5755. Now, I'm going to put Ray on the spot of the last time we had Larry on Pillars of Franchising. Do you remember the one phrase he uttered that made me go, damn, that's good?
No. No. You always come up with these obscure phrases that I can never remember.
It starts with tenacity. Larry?
Tenacity eats talent for lunch.
I
think it's one of the things you learn in the military. And if we all would stop looking for our bubble wrap to protect us from what, hurting our feelings or, protecting our rough edges.
Yeah.
We have to go out there and listen, the Stoics talk about this, right? Meaning comes from the struggle. And somewhere along the line, we have felt like, oh my gosh, it's hard, I shouldn't do it. No, you should do it. If it's hard, everything is hard until it gets easy. Yeah. Think about anything that's worth having is worth fighting for.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Any Olympian, let's take it out of the military. There's not an Olympian who came out of the womb with a gold medal around their neck. They failed over and over and over again until they got really good at something. So I believe tenacity does eat talent for lunch, and there's a lot of gray mediocrity around the world. I know a lot of people who are very talented who quit when the going gets tough.
Yeah.
I've seen the special ops community, people that are trying to get into the selection and assessment, get through that phase. They've never been tested as hard as this before. They might be a great shot, or they might be named the MOS, they might be military occupational specialty. They might be great at it, but they've never been under the pressure to perform, So, yeah, tenacity is one of, I think, the key traits of traditional American values that we've lost.
Yes.
I love it.
That's a great attribute for an entrepreneur.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. But one of the things, when Larry was talking, it came to mind was in order to be a leader, you need to be able to be led.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And a lot of leaders think, I don't have to follow anybody. But guess what? If you can't follow somebody, you'll never be a leader.
Isn't that the whole idea behind lead, follow, or get the hell out of my way?
I love that saying.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to bring everybody back in. Go ahead, Barbara. Who do you want to introduce next?
Well, Ray's just started talking, so let's hear more from Ray. And what role, again, if you don't mind sharing again, what was it that you were doing in the service?
Well, what I like to tell people is I can tell them all about it, but then I'd have to shoot them. So usually they don't want to hear it. But I work pretty closely in the Pacific Fleet Theater with a lot of in the war room, and talking with a lot of making sure that communications was flowing in all the appropriate directions. But one of the things that came to mind in talking to everybody, and I don't have anything that is wonderful as Robert or Larry, but during that time, the Vietnam War was not popular.
Right.
And we were told that, if we were on leave, don't wear your uniform anywhere because you're just asking for trouble. But I have to say, over the last 10, 15, maybe 20 years, I don't know, it's changed a lot. And all the people that sacrificed during that time, I think, are at least a little bit vindicated in that I attend a lot of social situations where there's a lot of veterans there, and we're asked to stand up and tell people, a little bit about what we did in the service. And I think that it helps make up for a little bit of that. And one small sad note, I joined the Air Force with my best friend back in 1967, and he ended up going to Vietnam. He ended up getting sprayed with Agent Orange, and he ended up killing himself because of the fact that he kept on getting cancer from it. So the work that these other people are doing for veterans is absolutely needed and appreciated by every one of the Vietnam vets. So
yeah. Well, the statistic that I heard, and this has been probably 10 years ago, is that there's 22 veterans that commit suicide every day. Mm-hmm. That to me it hurts hearing that statistic. Yeah. And it's anything that we could do to help shift that would be important. And one of the projects that I worked on with Dr. Paul Rand was a career development system that was specifically directed towards veterans and helping them transition from a military service into some kind of civilian service. And I think the thing that served them best from observing was becoming an entrepreneur, because they have all the skills that they've learned so much about, like Larry was saying, tenacity, right? Because and being and that stick-to-itiveness, just doing it and knowing that they need to take these certain steps to be successful. I've met the most amazing, successful veterans that have been entrepreneurs, and I think it's a great thing that they can thrive on. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. You learn a lot. I mean, some of the things are obvious. You as I mentioned before, in order to lead, you need to be led, have the ability to be led, and that certainly is one of the things. But I think a service career is something absolutely great for anybody who is just graduating out of high school, and as most people, they don't know what they want to do, and you will get a start in something. And it may be something you don't like. That's fine. After you spend 4 years, it may not be a career for you. You may decide to do something else. That's fine. But you've learned something. You learned to communicate with people. You learned to maybe lead a little bit and to be led. So there's so much that you learn in the military. And of course, I'm speaking of what the military was like when I was in. I don't know what it's like now.
So stop. You're answering the question of the day, and we're not there yet. So I'm going to give you one last question, and then we're going to move, is how is military culture, because you love the C word, how is military culture beneficial as a small business owner?
You learn to work as a team, just like Larry mentioned. That's part of it. You have to learn how you can't do things on your own. You know that there's teamwork involved in everything that you do. And if you can't work with the team, you're doomed for failure.
So I always heard from my dad things were there was the right way, the wrong way, and the Army way, and then I learned about snafu and tarfu.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
And then FUBAR, and God knows I've lived in FUBAR enough. So on that one, we're going to go to Jim White. How's that for a segue?
Okay,
So,
James White. I currently am a training consultant. I've had my own company for 33 years. And what I do, I teach about 15, 16 different training programs. All my programs deal with people and people interaction. But my time in the military, I'm listening to you youngsters as you talk. Because I went in the military in 1959.
Oh.
And
that's a long time ago, way before.
Long time ago, right? Yeah. When you mentioned 67. When you were going in, I was coming out.
Getting out, yeah. And that was a tough time.
Yeah. You know, and I have to say that I consider myself very fortunate because at the time I was a high school dropout. I had a girlfriend. We had a baby, blah, blah, blah. And the military gave us the basic foundation that we needed to be able to move ourselves forward.
Absolutely.
Now, the one challenge that I had in the military, when I was there at 19, I was in a place called Mountain Home, Idaho. And people kept saying, what's a brother doing in Mountain Home, Idaho, where I learned to hunt and fish and all that stuff where I would have never have known that before. I was raised in a family, and one of my not so good experiences was I was trying to get a home for my family, and they wouldn't rent to me in Mountain Home because of my race. And I went all around different places. I went to homes. So one guy said, buy a trailer. So I bought a trailer. They wouldn't let me park my trailer in the trailer park. But finally, a family on the end allowed me to put my trailer in there. But from that point on, first of all, so that means I've been a homeowner since age 18. So that's a long time. But from that point on, the military was excellent for me. It was a great experience. It allowed me to take other trainings. I was in the Air Police. I loved it as a youngster being in the Air Police. I love the uniform. I love the way you look. I love the direct traffic. I did all those kind of things. But after being there 4 years, I also took a lot of training programs, but I also enrolled in a draftsman program. And so the last 4 years, I was a security draftsman. So I did top secret drafting of maps and what have you for the military. So it turned out to be excellent. Then when I was getting ready to go to Vietnam on my next re-up, they said, Jim, here's what we're going to do for you. We're going to give you a $264 a month additional dollars on your check. We're also going to allow you to give you another promotion, and we're going to send you to Vietnam, but this time you're going to be in country in Vietnam. But at that same time, I had a basketball scholarship being offered to me by a company, by organization, a school, at Capital University. So my choice was go to Vietnam with the extra $264, another check, or go ahead and go to Capital University. Needless to say, I went to Capital University. So that's why in 67, and it was rough. 67 in Vietnam was an extremely rough period. I didn't know that at the time because being young, you're there, you're in it. I do know that a number of young guys who I knew from my school who went in during that time, were killed. But I didn't get out because of that. I wasn't worried about that because you feel that you're invincible when you're a youngster. Mine was the basketball scholarship was really the name of the game. And I went there to play basketball, got my degree, went to Ohio State University, got my master's, all that kind of stuff. So I have to say that the military, United States Air Force, played a tremendous role in me building a solid foundation. That's why when I heard that stat of 0.85% being it, somehow the military needs to do better. They need to do more to reach out to young people because we have so many young people out here today who need that stability, who need that discipline. And when I was young, if you got in trouble, one of the first things that they would tell you, you're going to go to the military. You either go to a little juvenile place, juvenile court or school, what have you, or you go to the military. And the vast majority of those young guys who went into the military became major contributors for themselves, for their family, and also for the society. So I just think it encourages me right now to look at the military and say, hey, let's put together a better plan to reach out and touch some of these young people that are out there, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, women, across the board. The board. So I see that as an opportunity. That's how my mind works. When I see that there's a crack or something missing, then I want to be able to fill that. And I have to also echo what you folks have been saying, Barry, Ray, and Jim, and that is, I believe the name of the game is to be in alignment with whatever your organization's mission, vision, and principles are. And if you're in alignment with that, you will sacrifice your own personal needs to fulfill that of that organization that you're with. That's what I teach in Procter & Gamble, Federated, Radio Shack, Honda, Toyota, General Motors, state agencies, county agencies, colleges and universities. First thing I say, do you know your mission? And 90% of the time, they don't know their mission. And so we work on putting that together. So I don't know if I'm getting off track.
Yeah, you are, but that's okay. I'm going to pull you back because I want to go back to this Kaplan University thing.
Okay, yeah.
So did they make the Final Four while you were there?
I was so good, brother. Let me tell you something, man. I could float like a butterfly and dunk like a bee, man. I know that. I went all the way through and didn't have to pay a penny, not one red cent for being there. So it was good. I was only being 6'4", but then I was the center, and played a lot of ball, and I was very athletically inclined. So it helped me out a lot. It was just a blessing for me. Not that I planned that. But I played in junior high school, high school. I dropped out. I still go back to my class reunions. 55-year class reunion. Those guys are still mad at me because I dropped out of school when we were getting ready to win the championship. I said, brother, let go of it. Let it go. Okay,
all right.
So
I want to get to the question of the day. So we're going to go to Mr. Jim Boswell, author of Lifelong Fulfillment, the host of Vision in Action, and a guy who got to play with nuclear missiles and torpedoes. My hero. Jim, tell us a bit about how you didn't blow things up, which really I'm going to ask everyone else how many things they blew up later. So everyone else can go for it.
One of the things that might be interesting is my dad was a naval mechanic for PBYs during the tail end of World War II. Wow. And he was also a P-51 pilot on reserve in Arizona during the Korean conflict. Now, my dad would never talk about that. He was from that generation where it was either so bad or they just wanted to get on a positive track that they would not revisit that with their children and only amongst themselves, other servicemen. But I appreciated that my dad was somewhat technical in that respect, and that sort of influenced my attitudes about education and so on and so forth. So, post-bachelor degree, I'm looking around and thinking, one thing is I know I don't know what I really want to do just yet. I also knew I needed more education. And so I started looking at the services in terms of how can I contribute? Where would I be best suited? And it wind up being the U.S. Navy. I actually interviewed with Admiral Hyman J. Rickover of the Nuclear Navy to get into the Nuclear Navy. And so that was kind of a milestone for me. And, he's sitting there behind his desk in Washington, D.C., little tiny guy, Russian extraction, Russian-American by then. And the very person who put the Nuclear Navy on the map. And, I'm there, I'm probably all of 23. And so you can imagine what that interview might have been like. Anyway, I passed and got in, and I wound up doing submarines. So I went to submarine school, I went to nuclear power school, I went to weapons school out in Dam Neck, Virginia to learn about missiles and so forth. And I wound up being a weapons officer on a large what's called Strategic Ballistic Missile Submarine, and we patrolled the Atlantic. And we did this out of Rota, Spain, being based in Charleston, South Carolina. And this is the one that carried 16 missiles and prevented us from going to war with Russia during the Cold War period because of the idea of mutually assured destruction. Either one of us pulled the trigger. And so we were very much self-defense. We knew that if we ever fired a missile, we had failed in our mission. So a lot of it's preparatory. Yes, we did have missiles. We had torpedoes. We didn't yet have cruise missiles. Those were toward the end of my tenure. And my last year in, I was the engineer and weapons officer on a 1944 diesel submarine, the last of our World War II diesel boats.
Diesel submarine. Wow.
Yes, diesel submarine. And so that's how I completed that. I got out from there thinking that, you know, the Navy really wants people to go to sea. It doesn't offer you a full life of, it's like they say, if you want a sailor to have a family and to have a home and have roots, you put that in their sea bag. Well, they didn't put it in mine, so I had to address that issue. And it was either go to sea some more and do 20, 25 years of that sort of thing, or get out and use both what I had learned and the VA benefits and so forth to continue on a different track where I can contribute more and be more effective. And so I left it after about 6 years. I have to tell you that along the way, I did encounter other people at AIM Advanced Micro Devices in Silicon Valley. My two immediate bosses, one was a Navy guy and one was a Marine. And I'll tell you, those guys would hire preferentially when it made sense because they knew that we all had certain expectations of each other. And so for me, it's always been a pleasure to work with ex-military because they typically are a little bit more focused and more disciplined. As has been mentioned already, we can already understand how to do teamwork. So that, in a synopsis, is where my background comes from.
Okay, so one question. That wasn't the Ohio ballistic missile subs. That was the Polaris?
This was Poseidon, which was after Polaris.
Okay.
And it was the Los Angeles class of nuclear submarines. Yeah.
All right. So then you finished your time in if I remember correctly, a diesel electric sub is what that was, right?
That's correct.
So
just like
learned,
you saw in the movie Das Boat. It's exactly the same.
Oh, really? That's okay.
So I was always told that a stationary diesel electric sub was quieter than a Los Angeles class sub. Is that
absolutely true?
Because
no question.
You couldn't stop the reactor.
No, you can't.
See, I listen and I learn. All right, we got everybody in here.
What does that mean?
Well, the whole point about submarines is going out and getting lost. In other words, you're off everybody's radar. You can't be detected. Well, the U.S. has been extremely good at producing submarines that do that. The diesel boat that I was on, when you're doing it, your most quiet is you're turning your shaft at about, 3 miles per hour, shall we say, for civilians. And you're doing it on the battery, which makes no noise whatsoever. And so, in essence, it's the quietest operating environment you can be in. On a nuclear boat, you can't stop all the steam noises of the generating and the nuclear reaction. So it's a little noisier, but it's still much, much quieter than you might imagine.
Wow. Interesting. Never thought of it.
Yeah. Joy of misspent youth. Too many listening to John Wayne and other folks then actually reading history. So now we're going to hit the primary question of the day and the secondary question of the day, which is when I look at the media, America is bad. It's all kinds of things. And my head says, why would anybody these days want to join the military? And what I love about it is we've got like 4 generations here, from everybody that's going to blow up to the world to the people who are out in the shitty parts of the world going, this really sucks. I'd like to hide. Mm-hmm. So my question is, and I'll let Barbara pick the first person to answer, but my question is why, given all this hateful rhetoric, Columbia University staged a anti-Veterans Day protest because we were evil and genocidal. So with all of that negative publicity out there, glorification of other crap, and I'm not going to go into it, but why would you tell somebody that was young, why would you tell Catherine's kids or Robert's kids, well, he'll tell them anyways in a few years, or ultimately my grandkids, why would you tell them to join the military? Barbara?
Robert, why would you tell them to join the military?
I would tell them to join the military because they'll be better off in the future joining than probably not joining. And I'm talking more about job opportunities. And of course, it depends on the job you go in. I went as a cavalry scout. If I was going to redo it again, I would go do a job that I can go straight into afterwards. Obviously, there's really no killing going on, and hope that never gets to that point in the civilian world.
You've been to LA lately or San Francisco?
I mean, maybe some of those areas, but you can go in and you can be military police and do your 3 or 4 years and become a police officer after that, or you can learn. If you ever want to be an engineer, instead of paying for a bunch of money to go to school, you can go and become an engineer in the military, learn all that, and come out and get a job. I mean, you might still need some more schooling, but at least the schooling is now covered with the GI Bill. You can cybersecurity. We were talking about that, before the show. Cybersecurity is huge right now, and the military is doing a big push on cybersecurity. That's really our next war, and or you want to call it behind the scenes, or I guess the next Cold War is really cyber. And so, big push for that, satellite intelligence, all of that type of stuff. You go in the military and do it, and you can get out and do it on the civilian side, and you can be doing that as a civilian, with a private company, or you can be doing that as a civilian contractor, working on a base somewhere. Like Vandenberg Space Force Base here, majority civilians. There's a lot of military there, but a lot of the jobs are run by civilians. So, if you want to come out, if you want to go in at 18 and get out at 21 or at 22 years old, and you have a lot better chance of getting a 6-figure job than even a lot of people who went to college during those 4 years. Exactly. So that would be one of just many of my arguments on why you should join the military.
All right, that's one. So my follow-up question is, how many people did you get to blow up? Or not people, how many things did you get to blow up?
I didn't really blow up anything, because if we were seeing we were doing something wrong. So as scouts, we were wanting to be right up to the enemy line or behind enemy lines, reporting back to command of what was going on. And so if we got caught, we were small teams. We were, depending on the mission, sometimes we'd be down to only 4 of us. And so, a lot of times we're going up to hundreds of people and watching them. So if we got caught, we were, it wouldn't have been good. Now, we did do some stuff, like EOD. Also we did hit IEDs when we were over there, but none of those were, I guess we're the ones who triggered it by running it over, but we didn't actually, it wasn't joyful.
So, any IEDs in Bakersfield?
No IEDs in Bakersfield, thank goodness.
Okay. So, what we've heard first is educational opportunities, and Jim also kind of echoed that too, or Jim Boswell. So, Larry, as the dude that got sent in to really, and I got a question about Russian too, but I'm not sure if you can give me an answer on show. But you said you spoke Russian, which is something else I just learned about you. So what's your answer to the question?
Well, my answer today is going to be different than it might have been 20 years ago, if I'm being honest with you. And I think that, so I'm going to give both sides.
Beautiful.
of this. And it is not going to be political. I'm just going to be stating facts here, right? I live in probably a pretty honored position here in that I get to still communicate with veterans and current military service members. Oh. All right. And I ask these questions all the time. How do you feel? Right. But trust has been destroyed in our veteran and military class. I mean, think about it. We have these warmongering politicians and the military industrial complex. That's not political. Nope. That's a fact.
It's a fact.
Right. Lies they told the American people about why we're going into Iraq. The U.S. continuing to fund the Taliban today. The wacky rules of engagement. And many others that have led to the unnecessary deaths of our brothers and sister veterans and service members. Why would someone go into the military today? It's an honest question. You got to ask yourselves this. Right? My son, I think, Phred, I think you know this. My son, who was 17, was killed about 3 years ago in a car accident. But we were talking. I mean, he was fascinated by, my career. His mother certainly didn't want him to be going in, but he was interested in it. He was asking questions. But I would say this, in spite of all that nefarious stuff that I just mentioned, the conversations I would have with him, I'm thinking about he's the person we would be talking about.
Exactly.
In spite of all of that crap, most folks who join the military still embody the American ideals of meritocracy, tenacity, pragmatism, volunteerism, patriotism, love, selflessness, sacrifice for the common good. We need more Americans like that, not less, right? And there's no better place to learn that. And when you come out the other side of this, you understand service. Yes, as folks have said, there are career opportunities. There's no better place to learn leadership development. There's educational benefits, and you learn camaraderie and community and diversity and unity, right? And I'm saying diversity and unity, not one or the other, right? Unity needs to trump diversity. You have a sense of purpose, adventure and travel, physical fitness and health. All of that is really, that's why you should join. Now, there's another question that we could talk about, like what happened? Why did all of a sudden we start pushing this nonsensical
before you get there
standards?
Before you get there,
military? That's a completely different conversation, though.
Right.
So, but that's why I would say you should join.
All right. So one question before you now show the earlier question is you made a comment there that kind of triggered me about travel.
Mm-hmm.
So you traveled to some really bad places. When I consider travel, I kind of think about going, hanging out on a beach and things like that. Now, the best military travel I've ever seen was in Apocalypse Now when they were surfing on the beach. What beach have you seen that you like best in your travels?
My military travels?
Especially if there was like napalm.
All right, in my travels, I guess the best beaches, I love the Indonesian beaches in Bali are pretty amazing, right? I wasn't there in the military, but crying out loud. I mean, think about Beirut right there, on the sea, was considered the Paris of the Middle East for years. It's heartbreaking to see what has happened to some of these cities, right? So, but here's the thing. I know, folks, I was not deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq, but listen, you can have joyful times no matter where you go when there's a sense of camaraderie around you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got plenty of buddies who have done multiple deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan who really enjoy the culture. Here's the thing. When you start understanding these are people, yes, there are enemies there too, but and are some cultures better than others? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I mean, you'd be silly not to think that, right? But there are some crap holes that I've been to, but there's been some beautiful places around the world as well.
All right. So, Barbara, do you want to take them to the next level?
Take them to the next level. Okay.
What does that mean?
What's that mean? What's going on? What does
that mean?
Wow. I'm not the one doing the sly comments here. I got to get it. This is bad. Go ahead, Barbara.
Well, I love some of the things you say. I think that it's really honorable when somebody enlists in to be of service, that they gain so much, right? They get so much out of it, and they become better people. I haven't ever seen a situation where somebody has joined the military and hasn't been a better person because of it. I haven't ever seen that happen. I don't know if is that something that you have experienced?
Well, I think there are outliers, of course. I think generally speaking, yes, you're right. I think any time people are willing to subordinate themselves for their greater good, you get something out of it. Right now, there are bad apples. Hey, I've got a guy that was on a sister team who is in prison right now for bank robbery. Okay, there are people who do bad things once they get out. You know, I've got people who have, frankly, friends who have murdered people once they've got out. Now, were they out of their frickin' heads because they're the drug cocktails that were given to them by the VA? That probably contributed to it. The suicide rate that we've talked about earlier today, right? That's a whole other conversation. We should do a whole 2-hour show just on that and the way that treated in the Veterans Administration. Right. Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And again, this is not a political comment. It's going to be interesting to see what comes with the new administration with the variety of people that are being appointed to cabinet and secretary positions right now. So
yes, and I agree. I mean, I'm hoping that the military-industrial complex that you mentioned it is done. I'm hoping that that's just done. That might be a fantasy.
I'm not going to go there. I want to know, you said what you would have told them then is different when what you would tell them now. So how has that changed?
Well, I'll tell you, 25 years ago, I trusted my government. At the time, I thought it was the right thing to go into Iraq. Now, I don't. You know, there are things that have come out that's, again, just facts, my friends. We were lied to about weapons of mass destruction, right? And again, we're trying not to be political here. So I think that a lot of our politicians are bought and paid for by the military-industrial complex. You can just look at the last presidential election. The people who were at one point were anti-war become actual hawks, politicians running for the presidency, going and signing missiles joyfully. That is wrong in my book. I would just want my son or my daughter, if she decides she wants to, she wouldn't, but I would just want her to go in with her eyes wide open. And just like I gave you a list of both sides, absolutely. Here's the stuff we need to be aware of, and here is the great things, right? I think it outweighs it. However, I think the worst thing that we can do what we have been doing for the last several years in the military is lowering standards, right? There is one mission for the U.S. military, and that is to destroy the enemy on behalf of the nation and bring our warriors home. That is it. And you do it quickly and decisively. You don't do that by lowering standards and having some woke idea of, oh my gosh, we don't have enough of this on this kill team. That is not the way you bring warriors home safely, right? So I would say go into it with your eyes wide open. Do some research on both sides.
Go ahead, because I'm still on this trust the government thing.
I see head shaking, so I don't know if
I'm just like, I've been don't trust the government, I don't know, since about age 8. Watching the Democratic
Convention. But I love my country so much. That's why I don't trust our government any longer. I adore the American way of life, which traditionally known as the American way of life. Yeah. We are still the most loving, innovative country in the world, offering more people opportunities. This is why people are flooding here, not the other way around, my friends.
You're not trying to leave.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
All right. Who do you want to ask next, Barbara?
Okay. Well, let's go with Jim Boswell.
Well, I had the opportunity to ask myself the same question when my niece and nephew were considering this. And I took a good hard look at some of the things that you just discussed about the trustworthiness of our government, the number of wars we get into, because it's easier to go to war than to be a good diplomat. And if you're wearing a gun, you're going to shoot it. It's as simple as that. So I chose to tell them, not on your life. You don't want to bet your life on it when you're 18 years old and you really don't know what you're really even about yet. And I don't trust the government to take care of you. So what I did was I gave them scholarship money, sent them to college. And I said, after you're done with that, well, maybe we can revisit that conversation. So here's the things I take away. I became very strategic in my thought processes because I went into business. I went into semiconductors. I kept doing technology. So let me offer these ideas. Our politicians, from the president all the way through Congress, even at the state level, really do not understand what it means to be a warrior of any stripe. They don't get it. And consequently, they can't support the mission for it, whether it's while you're active or afterwards through the VA. Their performance has been abysmal. Why would I put my trust in that group of individuals? And it hasn't really changed. I mean, who did we have? Johnson, with the Tonkin Gulf incident, which analyzed after the fact, he got us into a war we didn't belong in. Okay, it's happened time and time again. We went down to Grenada because it was convenient to liberate a country to save some students. What, pardon my language, what crap? Why are we doing this? I went back online and looked at the wars that we've been involved in or actions we've been involved since 1950. I come up with about 145 of them. About 80% of them are supporting this, that, and the other humanitarian incidents or transportation requirements. That's just great. But 20% of them are real wars that were gratuitous in terms of our entry. One is Grenada, which I mentioned, Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, Cambodia, Cuba, Kuwait, Bosnia, Croatia, Philippines, Colombia, Somalia, and Panama. What the hell are we doing? Instead of being good diplomats and working those issues and economic sanctions and doing the job of being a government in the world and working through or around the United Nations, and I'm not going to take this conversation there.
Please don't.
We fail as a government to do our number one job, and that's to prevent wars, to prevent them, and to provide us a level of security in the United States. So let's take our current situation right now. We have an issue with China. We have an issue with Russia. We have an issue with North Korea. Well, when I was in submarines, the whole point was, you shoot something at me, your country is gone. It will be dust. It's called mutually assured destruction. With the advent of drones, the advent of hypersonic missiles, the fact that we have submarine cruise launch missiles that can do the job, and you saw this in action in Iraq, right there on the TV, reported by CNN, why don't we change our policies and our procedures? Rather than try and send thousands of troops everywhere in the world, why aren't we out there instead of with 66 submarines, how about 100? And how about having them targeted appropriately to ensure our survival and also our position in the world? And then when we're out helping other small countries, we're doing it more on a State Department level. We're doing it helping that country to be the best it can be, not because I'm an oil company and I want to extract oil out of your country. In other words, we're doing the wrong things. And so by being 18 years old and turning to sign up to that, I would never advise anybody to do that if they didn't want to. There's other ways to get your education. There's other ways to learn teamwork. And there's other ways to contribute if you simply want to be a volunteer. So I struggle with this conversation. I'd love to say yes, but things have changed so drastically from the time that I was in the mid-'70s to now. I think it's gratuitous to continue to do the same stupid things, expecting a different solution. I'm sorry.
So, I agree, Jim. Can I jump in for 1 second?
Go for it.
Please.
I agree with you so much on this. And the interesting thing is that I'm not suggesting we go back to a conscription or a draft, okay? But let's think about this for a second. For the first, 100 and some years, I think it was 18, correct me if I'm wrong, but roughly 63 or 65 is when we instituted a conscription here, and it went through until So we had the Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and then we stopped the draft in 1973, I think it was. And Pew Research did a study that showed that I think it was 1980, 18% of our population were made up of veterans, right? Last year, 2023, it was down to 6%. All right, why are you talking like this, Larry? Because our politicians and just your neighbors, most of them don't even know someone who is in the military or serving. It used to be during those years when we had the draft, you had a family member or a neighbor who was going to be directly impacted by it. And now there is so much distance between the decision I'm making as a politician and anyone that I know, because we know there are a lot of, people who take all kinds of deferment, so they don't serve. It doesn't impact their immediate family. And that, I think, is wrong. Now, again, I'm not suggesting we go back to a mandatory draft. However, we're falling short of our recruitment, goals by more than 25%. Something's going on.
Well, Larry, I would suggest that our new national defense policy, if we do it the right way, we'll be looking for very highly educated and talented people. They will not be looking for boots on the ground, if you will. They're going to want somebody who has PhD potential to contribute to hypersonic missiles, to do advanced telecommunications, to do cyber warfare. And I don't think the high school graduate coming out of, current education systems is up to what the military wants. And I don't see the military necessarily training raw material up to that level that they really do need. So I see it becoming more subcontracted. I mean, that's what Blackwater was.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly.
So it drives me nuts. People talking about how the few people that we've got on deployment, military service members that were on deployment in Afghanistan and Iraq. Well, you look at some of the numbers that Blackwater had, they outnumbered U.S. military boots on the ground in many cases. But to your point, Jim, I think this is why the Space Force was formed, right? A lot of that stuff that you just got through talking about falls under the purview of Space Force. So it's going to be interesting.
But the question is, who knows what to do? And I don't think our politicians, our president.
See, wait, time out.
Any idea?
I let you go the first time. The show is to people joining the military, not why politicians are stupid.
We know
that. Why would I endorse joining the military if it's for naught?
I get it.
Yeah. No, I get that. Individual, it doesn't meet mission requirements.
So I want to point out to something. You said you're on a missile boat where if you attacked me, I ended you. I also wanted you to realize that's not a nuclear Navy philosophy. That's also a philosophy of those who grew up on the south side of Chicago. So a question I forgot to ask Larry, how many things did you get to blow up?
Lots.
My hero.
I mean, just a lot. I mean, it was.
That's me.
Part of it.
Boring. I like blowing things up.
I know. My successful mission.
No, I mean, training. Yeah.
Go ahead, Barbara. Bring it.
Wow. All right. So, Jim, I heard everything you said about it would be a tough decision. And I'm thinking that there are roles that people can do in the military that wouldn't put somebody in the front lines, but being in that military and learning the discipline and learning, like you said, how to be a leader and getting education in terms of being an engineer even would be beneficial to them, especially if they're coming from a background where, I mean, you said there's a lot of ways to get your education. I agree with that to an extent, but nothing like what is provided in the military, as far as I'm aware of. I mean, to get into a college, you need to have a certain educational background showing that you can work that educational system, because that's a system too. So, the education system is a system too, where you have to play by those rules in order to succeed in that genre. And so I think the military offers a much broader opportunity to an individual that wants to do something and make something of themselves, and learning the discipline and the teamwork. And I think there's just so much more to learn there than there is at a university for some people. I don't know. Would you disagree or agree with that?
Well, there's components of that, if you really look into it, is number one is I always grew up with the needs of the service dictate where you're going to get deployed and how you're going to get used. So they try and match talent to the demands of the job. And maybe they do it well, maybe they do it poorly. I really don't know at this stage. But the point is, you as an individual don't have control. If you want to go be a technician or, say, a communications specialist or cybersecurity, right, and you qualify, they're not going to give you the opportunity, right? They're going to ask you to, maybe do site security or something like that. Okay, so if you have the credentials going in, there's no guarantee that the service you join is going to put you in the job that you think you're going to get. If you fail a course, you're going to be shunted to something else, okay? And I know this because I went to nuclear power school and I didn't get through it, and they shunted me to weapons school, okay? So I have personal experience with what happens when an agreed plan goes awry for whether it's their reason, the service's reason, or your reason, okay? Mm-hmm. Under those circumstances, I question that I have real control over whatever that committed time is, the 4 to 6 years that an enlistee might put in, right? And I also question that they're making the most of my talents and my capabilities. And as an 18-year-old with no earthly idea what I would want to do, remember, I joined when I was 23. And I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I at least had a college education, and I knew a whole lot more about, how things worked and how I could work within the system, right? So I brought more to the table, and consequently was eligible to be an officer. So I had a different view of it than a young 18-year-old who doesn't have that advantage. On the school side and civilian, you don't have to go to college necessarily. You can go to technical school. There's other ways to get that kind of training other than saying, I need to spend a lot of money to get, a bachelor's degree, which who knows how usable that's going to be.
True. That's true. So at the same time, though, I don't know how you can get paid to learn.
But the pay is terrible. The pay and benefits.
It's better than nothing.
No, I'd rather go to Blackwater. They pay well, their benefits are good, and when you're done, you're done.
And you still get to blow up things and shoot people, right? All right. So something, and we're going to move on to our next contributor after this question. But something you said about being trained and being put in the quote best job possible. My question is what do you got to do to end up peeling potatoes?
Well, you enlist at age 18. You get assigned to the seaman's, basic entry level. You don't have any knowledge or anything. You're totally in training. You're going to be peeling potatoes.
Yep.
Larry, what about the Army when you joined? Did you peel potatoes?
Never. I hate them, but no. I never peeled.
Larry, did you when you joined before you became a Green Beret? No potato peeling?
No. No. I think that like in basic, they had people who were food, food services type of thing. I remember people having to go peel potatoes because they screwed up on doing something, but no.
All right. So who do you want to bring in next to the conversation? Because we need to move because Kat Becker has a question that I don't want to lose before she's got to go. So who you picking next?
Yeah, James, let's go.
Yes. Your question of the day was, why would a young person? And what I did, I listened to what you were saying. So just to start a career, to get an educational base, to be able to understand and get some discipline, some financial stability, even peeling of potatoes for many people, being in the air police for many people, doing other jobs like that, working in supply for many people, was a step up from where they currently are. So I think when you look at this, you have to take into consideration the environment that people are living in. For me, I have a cousin who went into the military after he got out of the college. I went in at 17. And so for me, things just made a lot of sense. Financial stability, you learn leadership, you get an opportunity to do some travel, you get an opportunity to be with others. Probably one of the best things that happened to me in going into basic was I was in the barracks with about 120, 30 young men from every shape, form, background, every ethnicity, every walk of life imaginable. And what you learned immediately, that your buddy is your buddy, not because they're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, but because you need each other. And the TIs will wear our ass out that made us go inward to connect with each other. So those things were really powerful. Camaraderie, medical benefits. Some kids are in situations they don't have medical benefits for themselves. Job security, that you have something over a period of time. And then for those who can go in at that higher level, I think it's an absolute outstanding move for them to go in. Now, I also today, I have 10 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren, okay? So for me talking to them, I'm also looking at, with the new administration, with the old administration, and whoever the hell, all of them are jacked up. All of them have their own damn agendas, and their agendas aren't looking at us. Their agendas are looking at where this big money's going to come from. You know, with all that, kids have to stop and think, you know, what is this going to do for me? Where am I right now? Is it better for me to do this or to do nothing? I mean, there's so many factors you take into consideration. And I've had those conversations with all of mine. Now, for me, unfortunately, none of my grandchildren, well, Grace's a little bit too young right now, went into the military after me talking to them about it. But I was in the military, my uncle was in the military, my grandfather was in the military. So it just depends upon where they are. But I think the big thing out here, it just depends upon your socioeconomic situation as to if you should go in and what you should apply for when you're going in. But it is a great option for some. Now, for others who have that opportunity to have an Uncle Jim who would say, hey, why don't you go to college first? You know, you should always take that if you can get that. But right now, it's tough for a lot of people. Equity is not necessarily here at this particular point in time. And those are all because the military can't run if people aren't being fed, if people aren't going to the infirmary, if people aren't getting supplies, if people aren't standing at the front gate securing the bed. Phred asked, who did I kill? I didn't kill anyone. I jacked a bunch of people up.
Blow things up. To maintain the peace either in the civilian side or out on the military side. But, you know, the thing we did not want to do with the folks that we were interacting with, we didn't want to take out our guns and use our weapons to have to subdue them. So never had that kind of exposure. So I think it's a great option, like everything else in life. There are multiple options that are out there. Military for some kids is a step up. For other kids, military is not a step up. It's a lateral, or in some cases might be a step down. But right now, America needs the military for literally millions of young kids that are out here who are doing nothing, who are not growing. They don't have a skill base. They get involved in a gang is nothing but the military for some of them. Yeah. They went towards the gang because they didn't have anything else in their community to do. So in their case, the military would have been much, much better for them. So it's a tough situation, but is the knowledge and information and data out there for young people
like in my opinion, somewhere around 10, 11, 12, 10, 11, 12, they should know that military is an option, just like Procter & Gamble and Federated, Radio Shack, and Honda, and Toyota, and General Motors. Kind of another step. So
I want to point out something here. I am not advocating shooting people. I'm just advocating blowing things up.
No, you're not. I know you.
Blowing things up, I'm fine with.
No, I know you. I know that's not nothing.
All right.
I do understand what you're saying.
Let's go, Ray. Bring it home, and then we're going to hit the next round of questions.
Hey, Ray, they push us at the end, brother. Come on, what's up?
Well, it's very interesting listening to all you. I think Larry and Jim have brought a perspective that is more global and understanding about wars and how bad they are. And you're sure there's never a good war that I can think of. But James brings home the more personalized aspect, which I can agree with all of you. There are people who are in high school thinking about dropping out, and if they decide to graduate, what are they going to do after? They have no idea. And there's a lot of people who even graduate college, as Jim pointed out. I don't know what I wanted to do, Jim said, after I graduated college. So the military is certainly a good place to start, at least. Yeah, you may not get. I was very fortunate in that I was always in electronics in high school, and they somehow recognized that in the Air Force and said, okay, you're going to go into secure communications. So my best friend that I pointed out, he was always, ready to fight anything. And so he went into the same thing that I think you went into, James, and that's the air police. So, and he ended up going to Vietnam. I ended up going to Hawaii. So you've got to respect all the perspectives that were pointed out today. And one point I need to mention to Phred is you're listening to the wrong media. Phred, if you're getting all this negative stuff, and no comment necessary, but
there's one coming. You know it. There's no way to stop that. But go ahead.
There's one thing I do want to bring out that's been rattling in the back of my head, listening to all you wonderful people talk, is basically there's a concerted effort that goes much deeper than the military complex that we've been talking about, I think. Because one day one of my kids came home, and my kids are around 40, so a long time ago, and they came home and says, I want to move to Russia. And of course, being a patriotic American and serving in the military and everything, this is like a slap in the face to me. Where were they getting that from? And I think if you listen to some of what's going on in some colleges today, that has been going on, teaching the wrong stuff, and our kids are getting indoctrinated against this country.
Okay. To your comment about I've been listening to the wrong news, why do you think KPHRED Radio exists? Because that's my argument against it. So, Kat, our good, bad, and ugly lady, ask the question.
You get, Kat.
All right. So my question is, on Monday, my husband and I attended a Veterans Day program put on by the junior high. He is one of Uncle Sam's misguided children, so that is part of why we went. That's the Marines, for those the acronym, USMC. And so they put together a really nice arrangement where there was coffee and pastries in the cafeteria. And then we were all ushered into the gymnasium where the students were. So my question for the gentleman here is, as you're walking into the gymnasium, there are just kind of regular folding chairs in the back. Then there's white, nicer chairs to the front. And then there's the podium all the way through. Where do you choose to sit?
Ooh. Barbara, I'll let you pick first.
Gosh. Okay, Larry.
Furthest away from the door so I can see the door.
Okay. I got you. Okay, James.
I'm with you, Larry. When I see that kind of arrangement, I'm saying somebody laid that front row out for me. And they're going to have to throw me out of that damn chair because I know they don't have my name on it, but that's what's sitting.
All right. Ray?
I always sit in the front or second to the front row simply because I have a hard time hearing and seeing, and I want to make sure I grasp everything fully before I make any decisions or comments.
Yeah. All right. Jim?
As close to the exit as possible.
How about you, Robert?
Well, my answer would change because we run multiple nonprofits. Typically I'm in the front, but now that I have a 2 and 4-year-old, and we make sure we include them in everything. We're next to the exit because if that our 2-year-old starts acting up, we were able to dash out. So yeah, definitely. I'm with everyone else, and I always like when we're in a building like that. I'm just like Larry or Larry. I want to be watching the who's coming in, who's coming out.
Gotcha.
So what I observed in this scenario is that the younger vets all seem to sit towards the back, and hardly anyone was sitting in the white chairs towards the front. The ones that were sitting in the front were the ones wearing the Vietnam hats, and there was a couple World War II vets that had attended, and they were sitting up towards the front. Wow. And my husband, he starts going towards the back, and I'm like, there's all these nice chairs in the front. Like, why don't we go sit in a nice chair? And he was like, oh, but our son was playing in the band, and the band was up in the front. And so having 2 children who've had Veterans Day programs for years and years, he's never wanted to attend. And I never really asked or kind of questioned it. I just respected that was his decision. But since our son was performing in it, I felt like we needed to be there for him. And it was such an interesting thing to walk into that room and have, both sides of the bleachers in the gym with the kids just sitting there and clapping. And I was like, it's kind of, we were taking something from the kids by not showing up in other times, to not have a full audience. And it kind of goes back to speaking of what all of you were mentioning before in your different viewpoints about going into the military. And I think, there's a piece of it of how we talk to our veterans and how we respect them and how they see themselves. And he didn't ever want to be part of any sort of fanfare or he's like, I did my duty and that was part of what I needed to be, but didn't feel the need to be involved in anything going forward. But now that I see what it meant to the kids to be there, I was like, we kind of got to go for our kids because it's important to them.
Well, I can give you a perspective on why the people sit like they do if you want to hear my point on it.
I would love to. I have some thoughts.
I think it has to do with that there's a natural affinity that every veteran has for another veteran. And I don't care which era you serve in, there is honor that's given to those veterans who served before you, whether there was conflicts going on or not, because these are the shoulders upon who we're standing and built this country today. Yep. Right? There's deference and honor that's given to older people. I mean, there's a natural respect that happens. And you were talking about veterans. I love this quote. Who was our first commander-in-chief? George Washington, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to butcher this quote, but basically he said that the willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war or to serve the country, no matter how justified, is directly proportional to how they view veterans being perceived from earlier wars before them. Right. So if we treat our veterans like garbage, the likelihood that our younger people are going to be willing to raise their hand, whether we need them or not, is diminished.
Yes.
Right?
True. Very true.
So this is why there are countries who are, who honor their veterans. And Russia, somebody mentioned Russia earlier. I studied Russian. Their veterans, even on their civilian clothes, they would wear their ribbons, civilian clothes after they got out because they were proud that they served Mother Russia, right? And other people served. I'm not suggesting we go that route, my friend.
No, but
I'm just suggesting that when you honor your veterans, then the younger people are more likely to be willing to raise their hand and serve, whether it's a just war or not. That's my thought. I don't know. I may be wrong. Everything I say may be wrong, by the way.
I agree with you. I agree with you on all of it. As everyone on here, the opinions are nothing new to me, and that's one reason I want to do this episode. But I go back to something I was talking about earlier, and vets don't like to talk to non-vets, and I get why. All right. I remember having an author and he was talking about the crap he went through, and I could literally see people in the audience feeling revulsion. It's like, to me, being a well-read person, understand a whole lot. But part of that is because vets don't tend to talk to non-vets. And because they don't, I almost said we, because they don't, it kind of complicates the why I want to join.
Phred,
yeah.
Let me offer a comment here. Okay, from Vietnam to now, the public's attitude toward its veterans has changed. For veterans returning from Vietnam, the accolades were non-existent to late to disingenuous. And it wasn't primarily the public either. It was the own institution that we served, which was the United States government. And you see it reflected in the lack of attention to the VA. You know, the money that, you know, anytime there's a time to cut money, it comes out of the VA just as much as anybody else. So I would say that when people sit in different places, we do appreciate the public's, you know, acknowledgement of what we tried to do for them, right? We do appreciate that. However, there's a vast majority who do not appreciate nor communicate their appreciation for the things that we've done at these various stages through the last 40 years. So, you know, people like to come up, and I wear a submarine hat, you know, as a baseball cap for athletics, right? And people sometimes will say, well, thank you for your service. And I say, well, thank you very much for recognizing that.
Yep.
Do I really want that? No. My time has come and gone. You know, I've past caring about that. But I appreciate that the sentiment is now a little bit more pro, you know, the vet that did a job for me, it affects my life. And I appreciate it. So,
I can relate something to you, how much that has changed over the years. I think maybe 5-6 years ago, I was in the VA hospital, and I was simply getting my blood pressure checked, and a nurse walked in, and she looked like she was an important person. So I said, oh, wow, the boss is here, saying to the person taking my blood pressure. And she looked at me, and she looked at him, and she says, no, I'm not the boss. When you're here, meaning pointing to me, you're the boss.
Right.
Wow. Has the VA changed or what?
You know, Ray, I have to also add that I hear complaints about the VA. I have never, and I've always had good treatment. Luck has been with me. When I go to the VA, I get treated with the utmost of respect.
Yep.
When I leave the VA, I feel so appreciative that me at 82 years old can do the things that I do, but I also see the folks that are struggling and that people are there. I have never seen anyone in the VA treat another veteran in a negative way. When I wear sometimes I'll wear my Air Force cap, and I always get, hey, thank you for the service, blah, 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 blah. So I'm finding that, I don't know, maybe it's where I go. People have always provided that level of respect, and I appreciate it. And when I see folks wearing the hats or what have you, I give them, but I give everybody respect. I mean, that's the bottom line. So if you're military and I give you that little extra piece, like, hey, brother, we connect or what have you. So I don't have any complaints about it. I hear horror stories.
Yeah.
So I want to, Jim Boswell brought up a really quick question, and I want really short answers on this, and then we're going to go to Deanna's question. But Jim said the phrase was, it makes you slightly uncomfortable, or it's when people say thank you for your service, you accept it and you understand it, but it's not what you really want, is kind of what you said. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
So everybody else, is that how you feel, or do you feel different? Larry?
How do I feel when somebody says this? No, I appreciate it, but I don't think they really know what they're thanking me for.
Fair enough.
So what I say,
that's a good point.
If a veteran says that to me, what I tend to say is, thanks for your willingness to pick up the sword
Yeah.
Your willingness to that. I don't care whether you served in a combat role or not. You were willing
You were
to do
there.
it. Just the willingness sets you apart from so many other people.
Absolutely.
Ass-kicking. Robert, as the youngest member.
Hey, how do you know?
He's only got a little bit of gray hair.
Careful there, Phred.
I agree, and going back to the comment about memorial services or Veteran Day services and where everyone's sitting, Larry can hit it on the head with that. We've hosted a lot of those, and it's like World War II, Korea, Vietnam, like it goes in order on who's sitting in the rows, and I think it's a respect thing. It's we always look up to the ones who served before us, and even though I always get comments from World War II or Vietnam guys tell me that they don't know how I did it, I'm always looking at them like, what are you talking about? And it goes back to on one of our honor flight trips, a World War II veteran came up to me and asked me, do you guys have socks? And I said, yes, we had a lot of socks. I know you didn't. And he goes on and tells me how he never changed his socks for 45 days when he was fighting in the Battle of the Bulge. We never had that issue. And so I tell that story because it's very important to hear what they went through. And so when people come up and thank me for my service, I usually say it's I did it for the men and women that were next to me, but most importantly, the people who served before me deserve that thanks more than I do. They really went through it, especially Vietnam, and how poorly they were treated when they returned home.
That's when I was growing up, watching them come home screwed up. So 45 days without changing socks, that's impressive. I think I've only been able to go for 7. So Ray, keep it short. What about you?
Yeah, I don't solicit it. I happen to wear it. This is the only military hat I have, and I have a collection of about 40 hats because I like to buy a hat everywhere I go. And I don't solicit it. I appreciate it, and I appreciate it the most coming from other vets.
Okay, we're sensing a trend here. Jim White, your thoughts? How do you feel about it?
I just show appreciation whenever anyone offers a hello, a compliment to me. It's good. I accept that, and usually it's in passing, so I really don't have time to have a discussion or a dialogue. At the VA, it's just an acknowledgement. Sometimes they don't say it, but I see it in them. They see it in me, and I feel that, and I show that appreciation for it. And if I can have a conversation, I would. But it's 99% of the time, it's just like, yeah, thanks, boom. I get this thing of touching my heart when someone says something, just showing that I'm being sincere and I care about you.
All right. So Kat Becker asked a quick follow-up question. We still got to get to Deanna's question. But what would you rather have people say to you to thank you for service differently? How should that be phrased differently so it doesn't annoy you? Because, you annoy Jim Boswell and he could launch nuclear missiles at you. Ray, what would you rather have them say?
I find nothing wrong with the phrase, thank you for your service. Because otherwise it's just thank you, and thank you for what?
Yeah.
Robert?
I think I would rather see action than the phrase. I think, there's a lot of veteran organizations that are struggling with volunteers or people, lack of people showing up to actually honor them. Show up and see what you can do to actually help those our military heroes who are either struggling or who are needing help right now.
Sweet. Larry?
I don't see anything wrong with it either. My point earlier was that I just don't really think that most people, based on the numbers I shared earlier, I don't know what they're saying. Yeah. You could add one other word in there. Thanks for your sacrifice and service. But what I do love is when I'm at an airport and I see little kids running over to someone who's in between deployments or whatever, somebody in uniform, and they walk up and they thank them, like a 3, 4, 5-year-old. That just touches my heart.
Those are really cool. Those are very emotional when you see that.
Yeah.
So I gotta tell you, when I run up to vets in the airport, especially when I'm wearing my Batman mask, and they kind of startle a bit.
A little off-putting, yes.
It cracks up the airline professionals, but when you run up to somebody like that, they kind of startles them. Jim White, what would you rather hear him say?
I think what they do, I try to take into consideration every system is designed to get exactly what it's giving. So that person is giving only that which they know about at that moment. So I just say,
Mr. Boswell.
Yeah, that's what I say. I thank them for the compliment.
Yeah.
So
I think it's the intention in what they're saying.
Yeah.
They mean well.
Exactly. That's it.
See, I've been contemplating this for a couple of days now because not having ever been in a war zone, it's really hard for me to understand. At least it was until the Avila Beach fires, where literally we had planes bombing the ridge and helicopters going back and forth and flames and destruction and everything like that. And when it gets within about 4 blocks of you tend to understand. And all I could think of is this is what a war zone sounds like. And even that, it makes me say thank you for keeping that away from us. So, Deanna, you got your bring the question.
So originally I was going to ask a question about neurodivergent individuals in the military, but you guys have all said some really interesting things that I think kind of need to be tied together. My dad was a Vietnam vet, and I was always really curious. Like, I wanted to hear the stories, but there was an unwillingness to discuss it with his young daughter. But as a kid, I overheard a lot of conversations between him and other veterans. With the World War II veterans, there was kind of this idea of if they had mental health issues or if something bad developed from their service, they were kind of kept quiet and swept under the rug and hidden from view. The Vietnam vets kind of had this societal viewpoint of they were the broken generation of warriors. And so moving forward, my dad, he didn't want to accept VA help. He didn't want to talk about the problems that he was having. PTSD was a huge issue for both generations. How has that been y'all's experience and the people that you served with?
And before anyone answers, can you guess what state she's in?
You already told me, so I'm out.
All right. Who wants to answer first? If you don't, no one volunteers, I'll pick. Larry, go for it.
Which state or answer her question?
Both questions. Deanna's question.
Southern is all I know.
Okay.
But neurodivergent folks in the military, they're going to have a tough time. You know, this is an organization that's structured to command and control. Anyone that falls outside the norm is going to have a tough time there. Now, I'm just going to share this with you. I wrote an article for I write for a couple of different magazines every month, and they're both veterans magazines. One's called Eddie's magazine, one's called U.S. Veterans magazine. And I wrote an article a while back called "Drop the Damn D" when it comes to post-traumatic stress.
Okay.
The word disorder, this response that we have to trauma, it's a natural response to trauma. It is not a disorder. It's not a dysfunction. It's the natural physiological response. And I've been talking about this for years, and it's starting to pick up steam. Okay, but post-traumatic stress, when you consider that I think it's 70% of Americans have been diagnosed with some form of post-traumatic stress. And that could be sexual trauma, that could be, getting hit by a car, whatever it is, Surprisingly, in the UK, only 60%, 70% here, 60% in the UK have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. So I think I don't have advice. I couldn't tell you about, how is someone who's got neurodivergent tendencies, how they're going to make it in the military. I don't think they're going to, it's rough. At least when I was in, it's like, we are here, as I said earlier, to destroy the enemy on behalf of the nation. We don't have time to be dealing with this other stuff. This is why they do physicals before folks go in the military. Frankly, I'm going to say this, and this might hurt some people's feelings, not everyone should be serving in the military.
Wow. So we shouldn't teach some people how to kill each other and use weapons?
Well, no, we should be. That's all we should be doing.
No,
and then all the support that goes along to make that happen.
All right. So who's next? Go for it, James.
I would say that it depends upon what the neurodivergent challenge is, because in some instances, the neurodivergent challenge may make that person particularly appropriate or ideal to perform certain kinds of tasks that the organization could benefit, because when you get them on that, they focus and that's all they do. So you probably have to look at it. And I think Larry's also right. There's some neurodivergent issues that people might have. It may not be the best place for them. Not because they aren't good people, but maybe whatever that might be. And I can't say exactly what it is because I don't know the wide range of them. And she informed me that dyslexia was not a neurodivergent.
No, it is.
It is. And for me, there are other places that I could serve and other people could serve, and we could do outstanding work. I didn't know it was an issue. I knew it was an issue in school, but in the military, they saw people who had similar kinds of challenges, and they found a place for them. They found a task for them. They found a job for them where they were absolutely specialists in that area. So you'd have to look at what they are.
All right. Well, I stand corrected then. All right. I wasn't aware that dyslexia is neurodivergent.
I didn't either.
So thank you for educating me today on that. I'm dyslexic, and I wasn't even diagnosed. I wasn't even diagnosed until I got to the Defense Language Institute trying to learn Russian. Yeah. Right. I had a very successful career in the military and since. So there you go.
I didn't know.
Thank you for educating me today.
Yeah. And you know how to swear in Russian, right?
What, for my master's degree.
As I said earlier, everything I say may be wrong. So,
but you mentioned Russian again, and before we go to the next one, you know how to swear in Russian, right?
I used to know how to swear in Russian.
Okay, topic for later because I don't want to piss off our Russian listeners. Robert, same question to you.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely strong points, and there's some that shouldn't be allowed in, but there's some that should be. We had a gentleman who was in our unit who you wouldn't trust to have up there with you on the front lines. He's kind of, snazzy. There's other things going on. I won't get into it. But behind the scenes, like analyzing, holy cow. I mean, he was just amazing at that. And so that's where he ended up getting moved to. So he did make it through basic. Actually barely made it through basic, barely made it through cavalry school because he struggled with the shooting. He struggled physically, like big roughs on the back. He was super small. I mean, I did too. I was 120 pounds when I first went in the military too. But he really did struggle. But we found a way, and after basic, he actually ended up going to the same unit at Fort Hood, Texas with me. And so they just found where his strong suits were, and it was that analyzing. It was us coming back after a mission, telling him what happens, looking at maps, and just being a very brilliant, smarter than even our commander, and our commander would admit that all day about how smart he was, and he was only 18 and stuff. But other stuff, no. So it just definitely depends. I couldn't really answer that question. It would definitely be professionals to do it. I've learned over the years how to take people, especially being in these leadership roles, on how to put people where they best belong to help, achieve the mission. But it definitely would take a professional to find that right there at MEPS, which, for those who don't know what MEPS is, that's where we go do our physical and stuff before the military. That's where that professional is going to need to be to see if it's a yes or a no.
Excellent. Mr. Boswell.
Well, in the situations I was aware of when I was in, and you're living with 85 to 135 people in a steel tube, there really isn't a lot of room for accommodation of anything other than mainstream. I know we had issues. We had a couple of people freak out, because of claustrophobia and things like that. And basically, we just transferred them off show. We weren't positioned to be terribly flexible. We were so focused. The military's changed a lot since then. I can't answer for what they're doing now or how appropriate it is. But back in my day, we were looking for people who fit the normal curve. real simply.
Ray, and then I got one more question for everyone, but you're muted. I knew I'd get to say that at least once today.
Yeah, the dog was barking, so.
Attack dog.
Rephrase the question quickly, so I just make sure I understand it.
Yes, sir. So should neurodivergent individuals, people with ADHD, potentially low-level autism, dyslexia, synesthesia be allowed in the military, or should they be excluded?
First of all, that's a spectrum. Am I correct?
Yes,
so
sir.
you can be at one end or the other. I think I may have had ADHD when I was in the 4th grade. They told my parents I was retarded. In the 5th grade, I was double promoted 4 times. So I'm not exactly sure what this is. You know, I think the military, especially now, would probably recognize that you're on one end of that spectrum or the other, and you know, either accept you for something they needed or not.
All right. So all I'm going to say is the R word is not in vogue these days, so you shouldn't do that. So my last question to you is we're going into the next generation of warfare. Everybody believes, and the fact that Robert and a couple other people talked about cybersecurity and things like that. So my view of artificial intelligence is it's no match for natural stupidity. And given that we've kind of isolated that the government is a pool of natural stupidity, they will ultimately end up using it incorrectly. So my question is what limits, if any, do we put on our AI fighting capabilities? Ooh, that really takes you down the rabbit hole. Who wants to jump first?
I'll volunteer on that one. We, of course, had to have launch keys, as you've seen, you know, in movies and whatnot. So I was sitting in the missile bay, and there were 2 other officers on the con, each of which had a key and veto power. And I could obstruct it using, you know, hydraulics, pneumatics, whatever, electrical switching. So if we weren't all in agreement on an order that came from the United States to launch missiles, those people have to also agree. So the checks and balances that the military typically has a human component at every level. And I think that's the check and balance that we're going to have to keep when AI gets involved in trying to suggest solutions that we should, as long as there's a human being who is responsible in the chain of command and has some veto power, then I think we have the opportunity to make it work.
Until AI decides that we are the problem and not the solution.
Well, then we're all screwed.
Larry, I could see something crossed your head as he said that.
Well, there's good and evil in the world. That's just the bottom line. I'm sorry to break some of your hearts, but there's good and evil out there. And we have enemies who do not have the same ethical boundaries that we have. If you don't think that China is pushing this as fast as they can, or that they don't have genetically modified super soldiers right now, you are living with your head in the sand.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have the answer to this right now. There are people smarter than me that are discussing this every day. I read a lot about it. I hear the arguments all the time, and even the smartest people in the country haven't figured this thing out yet. So based on what I know now, I'd say full speed ahead until we know what our enemies are doing. But we know what they're doing, and it's not pretty. Listen, our enemies have tentacles in every part of our society.
That's correct. Yeah.
Our electric grid, our education system,
everything.
You know, they're not holding back.
Nope. You're right.
Jim, and then we're going to let the guy who's got to deal with it for the longest period of time of any of us finish. So, Jim, your thoughts?
Yeah, the one thing I know, AI is here, period. And as I said earlier, if we're seeing it now, it's been around for a long period of time. So I think like anything else, it's a tool. We need to master the tool. We need to understand how the pluses and the minuses of it. And then again, have some folks sit down and talk about how do we best utilize this tool, but also be able to manage it and not allow it to manage us, because the way it looks seems like there's no limit to what it can do, and I have no idea how far that can be. But it's here. We've got to know it. We have to understand it. We have to manage it. And you're right, competitive. If we don't, someone else will rule us, and they'll use it against us.
Robert, final words from the youth.
Yeah, so we've been using it for a while. Typically, I think we were talking about, I can't remember if it was before the show or in the beginning of the show, but if the public is starting to use it, the government, the military more likely has been using it for a while. With that said, I agree with Jim about, you're still going to have the human aspect a part of it. I agree with everyone else when it comes to our enemies are using it. If it's out there, China, Russia, what is our next big enemy? More than likely, they're probably a little bit farther than us, because we are, we sit there going, we need to be as advanced as them, but we also sit there going, wait, this could be very bad down the road, and so we kind of get a little bit behind. But when it's going to save lives. Like there's both sides. It's probably going to take lives too, but it's also going to save lives when we're getting attacked and we're getting grid coordinates and we're setting it up. Instead of waiting for a human to calculate to send, artillery or anything like that, it's going to be instant. And that machine is probably just going to move into that position and fire. So instead of waiting minutes, we're waiting seconds for that. So, and another quick stat, I could be wrong about this, but when we were in, I was being told that only 6% of our whole country has ever been in the military. Out of that 6%, only 10% have actually been in combat. So, the AI thing, it's here. It's the future, and that's our next race. That's who's going to be the fastest at it.
All right. So we got about 2 minutes left. So I want to thank everybody: Jim White, Larry Broughton, Ray Pillar, Robert Tolan, and Jim Boswell, as well as my co-host Barbara Wainwright, who's been quiet a whole lot because I've been talking a whole lot, Deanna Brakefield, and Kat Becker. So quickly, really fast, where do people find you? Boswell.
LifelongFulfillment.com.
Tolan.
I'm on every social media site, either at Robert Tolan or From War to VA Loans.
Pillar.
Ask Phred.
Smartest man there. Larry.
LarryBroughton.com or at Larry Broughton on most social media platforms.
Jim White.
TCStraining.com.
All right. Would you like to say goodbye, Barbara, and you'll get the last word?
Oh, my gosh. What an honor has been to spend time and listen to everybody's viewpoints and perspectives on joining the military or not joining the military. And it's good that we didn't get too heavy into politics, because that's a deep rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, another story.
And I'm so privileged. I'm so honored to meet all of you. So thank you so much for your time today.
All right, folks. We'll be back in 2 weeks for another trip down the rabbit hole. Thanks for listening, and let us know how we're doing.
Feeling the energy, lighting up the night. We're gonna dance like